Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 1 of the Moon Boy podcast. I'm here with my best friend, Dallin Anderson at High Altitude Investing. Say what up, Dallin.
What up, everybody?
Today
It's
we
going to be a
decided,
good day.
yes, indeed. Today we decided that we are going to start a new episode on both of our channels. We're going to start running this podcast series. So if you guys like this and this is something you want to see more of, make sure you guys let us know either on his channel or my channel here. You guys can also find his channel in the link of the description of this video. You'll be able to find it all through there.
First, so you guys can find his channel in the links of the description of my video.
So Dallin has been trading with me ever since I got into crypto. He's actually the person that introduced me to all of this. So Dallin, why don't you go ahead and explain your story, kind of how you got into it and how everything's transpired from you investing inside the space.
Yeah, for sure. So I got into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I actually first heard about it around 2014, but didn't do anything about it. And then 2015 comes around, my little brother mentioned it, and I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Andreas Antonopoulos. Shout out to Andreas. And he was just talking about kind of like why Bitcoin is important for the world. He was talking about failing currencies around the world, inflation, hyperinflation, corrupt fiat currencies. And I just kind of knew that it was something that I should get into. And so I was working at a Marriott hotel at the time. And I'm trying to remember exactly how old I was, like 17 or 18 years old. And I downloaded the Coinbase wallet and purchased my first Bitcoin under $200 in 2015. And then it kind of started to create a nice little uptrend, and that's what really got me super interested in cryptocurrency trading. I told myself that I wanted to become a full-time trader, and then I was able to produce over 6 figures income in trading through the whole bull run and all of that. And Donovan was there along with me. We really capitalized off of all of that movement, and it's been probably the most beneficial thing that ever happened to my life. So, it really just happened because my little brother and just researching stuff on the internet, listening to podcasts like this, and then taking within running with what I could see as like, a vision for the future. So.
Right. Really excellent. Yeah, 2016, 2017 was a really life-changing time for the both of us. I mean, to kind of give you guys an introduction as to how I got started. I originally started hanging out with Dallin way back in the day. I was probably only like 16 years old, but I didn't start consistently hanging out until about 2016. It was about summer of 2016. Went over to his house. He told me a little bit about Bitcoin, kind of pulled up this great chart, and it was right after Bitcoin kind of broke out of its early accumulation of about $200, and it was at about 400 at the time. And he just pulled up a chart, told me that this was the future, and I had to get into it. He told me about decentralized finances and told me about the corrupt banking institutions. And so it was also around that same time where I was actually dropping out of high school. I knew that that wasn't a path that I wanted to go on. I knew I wasn't going to go to college. And so one of the first things I educated myself about was centralized banking and the monetary system in the world. And so about a week later, me and Dallin started hanging out, and then he just told me about Bitcoin. And so it was kind of a blessing at the time because I really didn't know what I was doing. I knew I had to dedicate my energy towards this new path since I wasn't going to school. And once he told me about Bitcoin, that was kind of all I needed to just jump head first, throw everything that I had into it, which wasn't a lot at the time. I was only about 18 years old. But then he taught me how to trade. We started trading together. We moved into an apartment with each other, and then with one of our other friends back in 2017. And we just got to the point where we were trading every single day, learning new indicators, learning different candlestick patterns, really anything we could. I think that we both started by just watching YouTube videos online. I don't know how you started, Dallin.
Yeah, it was definitely, as far as the trading aspect goes, it was watching YouTube videos. And then shout out to my buddy from the Netherlands, Pygos, because he is actually trading in the markets consistently. He had learned a lot about stop losses, targets, technical analysis, rather than just pure fundamental trading. Because what really inspired me to get into Bitcoin in the first place was the whole fundamental aspect of it: corrupt banking, hyperinflation, fractional reserve banking, failing fiat currencies around the world, even just aside from the inflation that happens in America, like Venezuela's inflation. So I had this very fundamental perspective of the markets. I was trying to trade based on fundamentals. I remember got added to a large darknet website. So I purchased XMR because it got added to a darknet website. So I was really trading based purely on news and fundamental purposes. And then I found out that technical analysis is really the way if you want to make proper projections in the market and have a statistical accuracy that will continue to grow your accounts in the long term. Technical analysis is the most powerful for doing that. Fundamentals are very useful for like the long-term investing kind of thing, but as far as predicting where the chart's going to go in different time frames, technical analysis is the way. So it's really YouTube videos. There was basically none at the time, which is why I started my channel, High Altitude Investing. And then people that were already making money in the markets that reached out to me and said, hey, I like you. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you should do differently.
Excellent. Yeah, I can attest to that. I can attest to that as well. I remember really I had a couple scenarios play out in my life where I was kind of just struggling and didn't know where I was going. And then I just decided one day that I was just going to dedicate all of my time and energy towards learning how to trade cryptocurrency. And so my path kind of started with me just watching YouTube videos about stock trading and Forex markets and just kind of basically just gathering all of the fundamental principles around trading. At the time, that was back in the Poloniex days with the troll box. I remember asking random people in the troll box if they could give me any sort of advice or people to follow, people to kind of like look up to. And it was really from that moment that I started just educating myself. And I remember going over to Dallin's house just about every single day, and we'd sit down with our laptops and we'd look over at the charts. And at that time, that was right when I first started getting into trading, and that was right at the end of 2016, right before the big bull run actually started. So we were able to get in at a really early time. We were able to actually maximize the majority of that trend moving forward into 2017 and into the start of 2018. And so back then, there really wasn't hardly any information regarding cryptocurrency at all. I mean, there was very, very, very few people on YouTube that actually talked about it. I know that Dallin had one of the very first channels on YouTube regarding cryptocurrency trading. And so it was a really good opportunity for all of us because Dallin started his business. He started his Discord server, and I was able to actually learn a lot from working inside of that. He was able to look into courses, and I was able to kind of learn the things that he was learning at the same time, and just being able to bounce ideas back and forth off of one another. And that's one of the things we just barely talked about today, was the fact that technical analysis, I feel like, is a very important building block for being a profitable analyst. I think that that's probably one of the better things that you can learn right at the start. Because I mean, you could jump right into the fundamental analyst. You could jump right into the fundamental perspective of analysis. But the thing that I found for me personally is the fact that if you know how to kind of trade based off of price and you have kind of a understanding of how the markets move, then that really gives you a solid foundation that you can kind of implement into learning more fundamental principles that have to gear more around investing itself. And so I know for me personally, learning how to trade was the best thing for me. Now that I've been around for about 4 years now, it's nice to be able to start reaching out and expanding that knowledge as far as fundamental analyst goes, so that I can actually develop more of an investment portfolio. But I can say without a doubt it was the best thing for both of us, really just learning how to trade in general.
And one of the other things that I wanted to mention and bring up is the fact that when we actually decided to do this and dedicate our lives to this, we were taking a calculated risk. I mean, you had people like Jamie Dimon, you had even billionaires coming out and saying that cryptocurrency is something that you shouldn't get into. It's high risk. And this was all right before the markets exploded. But from our technical analysis was telling us something completely different than what the media was saying, than what bankers were saying. And so we had to like kind of stand on our own 2 feet and make the decision, okay, what are we going to do? Are we just going to find something else? Or are we going to just continue to trade in these markets and make cryptocurrency our thing? And I think we just kind of always knew in somewhere inside of us that cryptocurrency was going to be huge. we really believed in it. And so when we were finding all these people that were trying to tell us not to do it, or big names out there, we decided to take that calculated risk. And it was from a financial perspective, the best thing that we could have done. And also from a perspective of learning real life skills and teaching things to people on our channels, and just learning how to produce revenue in your life. It was more than beneficial for us on multiple levels, even beyond just the financial side of it. It was a very, very growth experience that caused a lot of growth in our lives and matured us in a lot of ways that we didn't have previous to this.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And to kind of go off what the first of what you just said, we got into cryptocurrency at a time right after the Mt. Gox attack that took place in 2013. Dallin said that he kind of started learning about it in 2014, and then I got into it. He started telling me about it at the end of 2015, and then I jumped in 2016. And so this was coming after the original fallout of the Mt. Gox attack, where I think it was like almost 1 million Bitcoin were stolen in that hack. And so this was at a time where cryptocurrency had a couple big bubble phases. A lot of big investors like Peter Schiff, for one, Jamie Dimon, what you mentioned, these people were saying how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency were dead. There was no way it could survive after such a monumental attack on the server. There was all of this FUD that came out. And so it was a really, really scary time. I mean, for somebody to get into cryptocurrency at that point, it was very uncertain as to what could happen, especially with a couple 18 and 19-year-old kids that had no trading or investing experience at all. It was just kind of, we trusted ourselves. We believed in the future of Bitcoin. We thought that this was a very good project that had a significant use case in society. It was going to solve so many different problems amongst decentralized finance, and kind of taking away the power from centralized banking in America, and not only America, but just the world today. And so it was very profound that we were able to kind of jump in on that and just minimize all of the FUD that you hear and just kind of go full-heartedly into this. And it was, like you said, a very great learning opportunity. I mean, I learned more about business. I learned more about not only just business and finances, but my emotions as a human being, learning the emotional psychology of the market. I think that that was probably the biggest thing that I can take away from investing into cryptocurrency, because with such a volatile market, with so many people just talking down upon it, with such a small amount of people actually inside of cryptocurrency, it's really hard to not listen to all of these external voices that are telling you not to do something. And so the fact that we were able to do that, it really did show us a lot. Now, we wanted to kind of structure this podcast around us talking, kind of giving an introduction around our story. And now we're actually going to dive into the next part of this podcast, which is going to be talking about some analysis for you guys. We want to talk about some things that have to do with the charts. And so Dallin's actually going to show you guys some analysis with some things that he's looking at right now.
Yeah, perfect. And before we do that, I just wanted to say, you guys, the biggest takeaway from everything that Donovan just said was that out of what other people are saying and tune into yourself and learn to trust yourself as a person. Learn to develop your own skills. Stop comparing everything that you do to what everybody else is saying, and start comparing everything you do to yourself. And if you guys are learning and enjoying from this podcast and getting value out of it, which I assume you are, click that like button and that subscribe button on either my or Donovan's channel, whatever you're watching this from, with the notification bell, and comment down below if you have any questions or you just want to let us know where you're tuning in from in this world. So let's go ahead and get into the analysis. I'm going to run over Bitcoin and Litecoin. And I think, Donovan, you're going to run over gold and silver?
I was going to run over gold, and then we're going to take a look at some Bitcoin analysis as well, just some correlations with that.
All right, perfect. So let me just pull up my screen here for everybody. Share screen. How's that? You can see everything?
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. So this is the analysis that I've been sharing with my community over at High Altitude Investing and in my Discord server as well. And this kind of shows the pattern perspective of what's going on in Bitcoin since 2017 and where we are at today in 2020. And kind of what I'm seeing here is a very large consolidation pattern. So what that means is that prices are moving in between two places. So you can have a horizontal pattern. Let me just take some lines over here like this. You can have a horizontal consolidation pattern where prices bounce up and down inside of a horizontal range. You can have a triangle consolidation pattern, what we're actually seeing right now, where you have a downtrending resistance and uptrending support. And you have prices bouncing inside of that range. And then you can have like downward pointing channels and upward pointing channels. So those are the kind of different consolidation patterns. You also have wedges, like I have drawn right here, this big huge wedge that happened right here, and then you have another wedge that we're forming right here. So kind of what this means is that prices are getting squeezed into a smaller and smaller range. This usually means that you can think of it like a soda can. If you take a soda can and you shake it up a whole bunch and then it pops, what's happening in this squeezing action is every single time it reaches resistance and finds support, you're shaking that soda can up and it's building pressure. Now it's either going to pop in either direction, up or down. For me, we've been in a bull market since Bitcoin was created. There's been 1 year bear markets along the way, but overall we are in a very large bullish trend. So from balance of probability, based on probability, it's a lot more likely for me that we see an upward break out of this consolidation triangle pattern that we're seeing in Bitcoin. Now, as far as like kind of the shorter term price action, what's going on in the smaller time frames, what could happen over the next little while, we could still see a drop. And I think you've mentioned this on your channel as well, Donovan, where we could fall back down to the 76 around 5,000 before we rally back up to the top of this range, this consolidation pattern, this downward pointing triangle, and then proceed to break out. Or we can find support where we're at and find a breakout from there. But either way, you're focused on the bigger times and you're not just trying to trade every little swing in these smaller time frames. You can position yourself for profit in both scenarios because you can buy the dip and you can keep some of your holdings in currently. And so that's kind of my Bitcoin analysis. I think that 10,000 per coin in 2020 is very possible, even if we dip down one more time to the 786. And I think that we can even see significant higher prices than the all-time high in the future. We just have to kind of break out of this range and rebuild the momentum on the upside for the market. So that's my personal analysis on Bitcoin. I know that Donovan's is very similar to this. And it's an amazing time to be doing technical analysis on crypto and to be seeing these chart patterns. You're not going to find chart patterns this clean anywhere else in the world other than cryptocurrency, especially, I mean, these are 1 week candlesticks, but in the stock market, you'd be looking at like 1 month candlesticks or 3 month candlesticks. And it's going to take forever for you to see returns on those investments that you're making. So this crypto is really the place to be if you're into this kind of trading and technical analysis thing. Now we're going to go over Litecoin and kind of my views on Litecoin. This is Donovan's favorite crypto. Just kidding. I always bring up Litecoin, and he's still bullish on Litecoin, but he's a little more like he's got other favorites.
Boys.
And now you know why this is called the Moon Boy Podcast. XRP to $589. That's a meme, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know. All over crypto Twitter and around the crypto space, people are calling for $589 per XRP. So we like to, sometimes when we're driving around town together, we just tease each other about $589 XRP token.
It's only a meme if it doesn't come true, though. Remember that.
Yeah, it's only a meme if it doesn't come true. If hyperinflation just starts to take off around the world, $589 XRP isn't impossible, but that just means that $589 isn't worth as much as it would be today. So you kind of have to keep the perspective of the dollar can lose value too. So this is Litecoin. For me personally, I really like the Litecoin chart. One of the big things that Donovan and I look at when we're trading is market cycles. So I'm going to pull up a classic chart that's used often in trading and investing. And this is the Wall Street cheat sheet. You can see there's a disbelief phase, and then you get into optimism, thrill, euphoria, complacency, anxiety, capitulation, anger, depression, and then back into the disbelief. So these cycles repeat over and over and over. And one of the things that we see in Litecoin very clearly is this big disbelief phase right here. We have a very large euphoria phase right here, some capitulation right here, depression right here, and then we're back into another disbelief phase in Litecoin. So from a market cycle perspective, I really, really like the Litecoin chart. Another thing that's actually bullish, this is kind of counterintuitive. If you're new to trading, you think it would be the other way around. But if prices are falling and volume is falling, this generally results in a bullish move. And as you can see, volume and prices fell from 2018 into the beginning of 2019. And then we have prices rise and volume rise as it rallies up, which is bullish as well. And then you have prices fall and volume fall. So that's what we would call a bullish volume profile. You have a volume profile that can result in a lot of bullish action to come. Now, the other kind of last but not least thing that I like in the Litecoin chart is the Elliott wave count, where we have an ABC correction here. And then we've created a 1 and a 2 wave. Now, I know both people that everybody that watches Donovan's channel and everybody that watches my channel you've shown Elliott waves a few times on yours, right?
I definitely map out market cycles with Elliott waves. They've seen them before.
All right, cool. So basically, you guys have probably seen this before, but if you haven't, Elliott wave states that there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 wave after an ABC correction. So we can look at that as well. And you'll see very quickly that from an Elliott wave perspective, we've had an ABC correction, and just like how the market cycle chart repeats, after an ABC correction, you get another Elliott wave cycle. And so what we're seeing is that ABC correction, this part right here, and now we're getting another Elliott wave cycle. So that's why I like Bitcoin, and that's why I like Litecoin. Bitcoin has a great pattern perspective, and Litecoin has a great market cycle and Elliott wave perspective. So that's kind of my spiel on the markets. Donovan, do you have anything to say about that?
Not really. Overall, we have roughly the same sort of analysis. I mean, from a market cycle perspective, Litecoin looks absolutely beautiful, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't really get more symmetrical than what we're experiencing in the current market structure. As of right now, I do believe that we're headed really close to that next big impulse that's going to take us. And I would expect that that next impulse would take us to at least that all-time high mark in this Litecoin chart, which would be $300 approximately. And so I think that everything lines up really nice with more bullish continuation to come.
Yeah, I agree. So although there's fear across the entire market, and although you have, again, people, big names all around the world, even billionaires, saying not to invest in crypto, there still are billionaires telling you to invest in crypto, by the way. But there's a lot of what you see on public media and stuff telling you not to get in and all this type of stuff. You kind of just have to trust your analysis and trust yourself, see this from the perspective of technical analysis, and then you see this as a huge opportunity rather than a large risk. And so you shift your lens there. And this is a time for me, really, that you couldn't get a cheaper price for a lot of these main altcoins and for Bitcoin than what we see today. Maybe altcoins versus Bitcoin value see a little dip, but as far as dollar value goes, everything is dirt cheap right now to be picking up and investing and even trading into the future. So Donovan, I think I'll hand it over to you to do your analysis on the markets as well. Let me just stop the screen share here.
Cool.
And
so let's go over my screen here. Let's take a look at, first we're going to take a look at some Bitcoin. Let's clear all of my notifications. So first we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin because I wanted to kind of update my subscribers with some things. Now, we all know that recently Bitcoin started to kind of rally again. Now, I want to talk about some things that have correlated with gold, but first let's actually just take a look at some Bitcoin analysis. Now I've got two different trend lines drawn right now. My two trend lines drawn are indicative of one more of a conservative approach and then one more of a less conservative. And so kind of what we're seeing now is with this first trend line I have drawn here, we can see that this is a resistance that's held us the entire length of this bear trend. But recently we actually broke outside of that. Now I've updated my subscribers pretty significantly with what's going on currently. This is my red resistance box that I had drawn. This red resistance box makes up two different horizontal resistance levels that I was watching in this initial retrace. Now, with our first less conservative approach with this trend line, we've actually broken outside of that. Now, kind of what I've been telling you guys is I would consider about $7,600, or roughly about right here, to be about the low that I want to see. If we start trending below 7,600, I'm going to start expecting to see us kind of drop back down for some new lows. But then with our more conservative trend line, we can see here that we are still rejecting at resistance. And this is something we need to watch out for. Realistically, we need to see a pretty sizable impulse and continuation taking place from this initial move that we saw right here. That's exactly what I personally will be looking for inside of Bitcoin. Now, this impulse looks really good on a shorter time frame. If we can hold support of about 76 and then continue to kind of uptrend in this cycle, then that's going to look really bullish for me. And I would expect to see us further continue upwards of about 10K Bitcoin. And so that's kind of what I'm watching out for as of right now with Bitcoin. Now, something that's really, really interesting that I've been noticing amongst the cryptocurrency market is we have all of this recent fear that's driving this initial impulse that's correlated to the Iran bombings that have been taking place. Now, you guys may or may not actually have known or heard about this, but I can almost guarantee that you have. So what has been taking place in gold? Now let's actually drop it to a little bit of a bigger time frame so that we can see here. Gold has been in this kind of accumulation pattern. Now you can call it a rounded bottom, you can call it an inverse head and shoulder, whatever it is, either way it shows a reversal is about to take place. And we've actually cleared all of our major horizontal resistance levels. Now, what we've seen here is just kind of an impulse heading out of this accumulation. But what really drove this initial impulse was actually all of this talk of war that America has been having inside the markets with Iran. We had the bombing that took place. They bombed Al-Assad air base, and Trump actually gave the orders to bomb their general, I believe. I really don't try and keep up on that type of stuff, especially not politics very much. But I'm much more focused on what's taking place currently inside of the market. Now, what I'm noticing inside of gold is the fact that this consolidation that we've been seeing is roughly the same as what we've been seeing inside of Bitcoin. Now, if we drop it to the Bitcoin chart, we're going to see that we've had this retrace since about June, and we've had roughly the same sort of market structure that's following very similarly to gold. Now, what took place in gold was we had this kind of accumulation that took place right before we had our massive impulse. And so what I'm talking about is actually right about here. Now, this is kind of roughly the same market structure that we saw with Bitcoin. We had our consolidation that took place here before we had our real blow off top phase. And then that's what started our short-term correction. Now, the short-term correction was really, really choppy. We had a lot of price swings, both on the downside as well as the upside, but it looked really similar to what we're seeing inside of Bitcoin. Now, what happened was gold actually started breaking out after the recent news that took place around all of this war with Iran, and it really front ran Bitcoin. Now, the fact that Bitcoin followed roughly the same sort of accumulation, even though we dropped a little bit further, this is roughly the same sort of accumulation that we saw. A lot of choppy action, both on the downside as well as the upside. And then with all of the talk of war, we actually started to break out from this early bottom that we saw at about $6,600. Now, what this tells me personally is the fact that what we're experiencing now is there's now enough money inside of Bitcoin's market. It's now becoming a big enough currency that we're starting to see how it actually reacts with turmoil and uneasiness and fear inside of the world in general. Now, kind of what we've been wondering for quite some time is Bitcoin actually going to rally when we have talks of war? Maybe World War III happens or something. How is that going to affect Bitcoin? And we've always kind of viewed Bitcoin as digital gold, so we expected it to perform well, like commodities generally do, with uneasiness in the world. And so to see us actually start to impulse with all of this recent chaos ensuing, it's actually a really good bullish sign in my opinion. Now, even if all the talks are, even if with all of this talks with Iran, even if we don't go to war, even if it was just kind of a scare tactic, whatever it might be, the fact that we are seeing good reactions from that inside of Bitcoin leads me to believe that people are starting to accept Bitcoin as more of a safe haven asset compared to the dollar, compared to stock market. And we should expect to continue to see this trend play out. Now, I have no idea if war is upon us or what's going to happen inside of the economic structure, but I do believe that people are starting to turn their attention away from Bitcoin being just kind of this random, dumb, fun money that people play around with on the internet. And they're actually starting to look at it more as something that they can put their investments in, put their money away, and guarantee safe haven for the future. So, Dallin, I kind of want to talk to you about what are your thoughts. Then I'll quit this screen share. What are your thoughts regarding all of this chaos that we're seeing inside of the current world with all of this bombing in Iran and just the uneasiness that we may experience? I mean, election year is just under a year away. How do you think all of this is kind of going to correlate with Bitcoin, and how do you think Bitcoin will perform?
Well, first of all, I personally think that it's important to remember that we're not using these things as indicators for our trades, but rather we're using them as gauges for sentiment in the market. And the reason that I say that is because it's not like when we see people going to war in Iran, we come over to our computers and we sit down and we go long on Bitcoin. It's more like we're already long on Bitcoin and we see political stuff going on and we see how it affects the sentiment of the markets around our technical positions already. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is I don't want to give the idea that whenever just something political happens, you can have a probability of profiting in the market based on what's happening in the news. But rather, it can be useful to gauge sentiment, like you were saying, Bitcoin being a safe haven, people going into it in times of fear. If that trend continues, that's going to give us a lot of fuel for the future in the markets, a lot of market cap growth, money coming back in. As far as war goes, now war is an interesting thing. It can bring people together country per country in the sense of all of America comes together to do something against another country, and all of another country comes together to do something against another country. But it also tears people apart. And in the same way, it creates value, but it also destroys it. If you actually go look at like the U.S. stock market, what happens after large amounts of war, we see a lot of growth in the world because new technology gets produced, and it kind of puts humanity in this go, 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 we got to figure stuff out really, really fast mindset to where we really push ourselves. But we're also, we can destroy an entire city, and that takes economic value away for a certain period of time. So there's pros and there's cons to it. I'm the same way, Donovan. I don't listen to the news every single day. I don't pay attention to political stuff very often. I try to keep my lens of clarity very simple so that I don't have a lot of distractions and emotions going on. I don't want to wake up in the morning and go over to my Twitter and then get mad about what some politician said and have for the rest of the day have a bad day. But I do agree with you that these types of things can fuel markets, and I think that they can sometimes add to the mania that's already going on within financial markets. And so it is something to be watching, thinking about, and paying attention to a degree, but not engulfing yourselves with. So that's kind of my view on everything. I do think that it's 100% true that in times of uncertainty, commodities do well. Wheat, like food, oil, silver, gold, all those things do well in times of uncertainty because those are the things humans actually have to have. You don't have to have the nicest car in the world, but you do have to be able to get to work to pay your bills. And so you have to pay the gas to do that. And so the commodity at the end of the day ends up being very valuable in times of fear.
Right. I can agree with that. And I think with all of this uncertainty that's kind of playing out right now, and to see Bitcoin performing well, it does give us a little bit of clarity as to that aspect of things, because up to this point, throughout the 10 years of Bitcoin, how long it's been around, or I guess it's 11 years now, how long Bitcoin's been around, we've never really had major political turmoil because Bitcoin spawned directly after the financial crisis in 2008. And that was at a time where I remember oil prices, everything really for the most part had kind of fallen off. Gas prices had continued to rise and it put people in a tight pinch as far as what they were going to do. There was a loss of jobs. There was a lack of abundance kind of flowing around. And that was directly correlated. That was directly spawned after, Bitcoin was directly spawned after all of those events that took place. And so now that we've actually had a little bit of uncertainty pop up inside of the world amongst this talk of World War III or World War with whatever, all of this bombing that's taken place inside of Iran, to see Bitcoin performing well, it does give us a little bit of clarity as to what we could expect if something else takes place. Now, I think that this is a really positive sign for Bitcoin. Now, not just because of all the talks of war, but I mean, if we think about this right now, if there was a major financial collapse, which I personally expect to see, I do think that it's going to be very, very good for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is going to be viewed as that safe haven. Now, Bitcoin not only functions as gold, but it functions as a form of currency. And even if it's not as fast as other cryptocurrencies like XRP, even if it doesn't perform quite as well to some people's standards, it's still functionable and more functionable in a lot of ways than the current financial system. And so if in fact the financial system kind of implodes and we hyperinflate, the dollar hyperinflates, and that's just a chain reaction amongst all of the other fiat currencies amongst the world, I think that Bitcoin is going to perform very well in that time. And so it's really important that we have these kind of events playing out right now. We can see how Bitcoin's reacting, because for me personally, if we would have saw gold start rallying, we would have saw oil start going up, and then we see Bitcoin start going down with all of this chaos that's ensuing in the Middle East, I think that that would have been a very negative signal, and it would have given us more of an understanding as to what we could expect if the financial system
uncertainty
imploded. Exactly. So that's kind of my thoughts about all of this stuff. Overall, I could care less about politics. I'm sure that you can attest to that, but it is a good sign to see kind of how we do have this clarity for once.
I think that Bitcoin and crypto in general, in a time of complete uncertainty in the world, will probably create more millionaires and billionaires than any other thing in history. Now, with that being said, again, it just goes back to the fact that commodities do well. Gold does very well in times of uncertainty, but the thing with gold is you can't go, it's not reasonable to go spend it. Like you were saying, it's a currency, but it's not really a currency.
Right.
It's not easy to go transact in gold. You can't go to Walmart and go spend gold. But if you have a Shift card or something that can convert Bitcoin through a Visa, you can go spend your Bitcoin at Walmart or go buy gas with it. You can spend it pretty much like it's the US dollar in lots of places, and even more places are accepting Bitcoin in and of itself without any conversion unit. And so I think that trend is going to continue. I just want to make sure to clarify that actually in the 2008 crash, it was mainly the stocks, real estate, and stuff like that that was crashing really hard. Oil actually performed well right up until 2008, and then it saw a crash. Kind of as the stock market, as those markets, they crashed first, oil saw a huge increase in value out of that fear of the stock market crashing, and then oil crashed after that because the stock market was undervalued enough that it could bring the money back into the stock market and out of the oil markets. So if you look at oil, you look at gold, you look at silver, and if they do well right when the stock market starts crashing, if we have some type of global catastrophe or anything like that, then you can see Bitcoin as something that would do the same thing.
Right. Now, before we wrap up this, kind of want to talk about one final thing. So in market uncertainty, do you think that the rest of the altcoin market fares well compared to Bitcoin? If there was sort of turmoil, do you think they would all kind of go up together? Or would you consider Bitcoin really that safe haven because Bitcoin's the one that everybody knows. Bitcoin's the one that has the real institutional adoption taking place. And so do you think that altcoins in that same sort of situation, do you think that they would start to fall off a little bit, or do you think they would continue to rise with Bitcoin, theoretically, if that's the case?
Well, I think altcoins will do well. Now, the thing with altcoins is you don't want to have a high percentage of them. You should definitely have a majority of your entire portfolio inside of Bitcoin, even when altcoins are doing well. Because when Bitcoin does well, altcoins does well and sometimes even better, but Bitcoin is still rising and it's way more stable than the altcoins. The other thing to note is that like 90% of all altcoins end up in large downtrends that haven't seen any type of a reversal. So you want to cherry pick those altcoins very carefully and understand kind of why you're investing in them before you get into it. With that being said, I think altcoins will do very well. I think that people will, if Bitcoin goes up like we expect it to, people will want to send money to another person in 5 seconds with the Ripple network or XRP network because it's so much faster than Bitcoin. But the cool thing about cryptocurrency is you can do atomic swaps. So you can convert your Bitcoin into XRP for a very low fee, send it to somebody else very quickly, and then you're still in the Bitcoin market, you're still in the XRP market. So I think, yeah, altcoins will do very, very well. It's just about picking the ones that make the most sense to invest in and keeping a majority in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has a steady uptrend and that hasn't changed, whereas a lot of altcoins are either oscillators where they create uptrends when Bitcoin goes up, or just have been in a downtrend since their creation.
And to kind of piggyback off of that before we kind of wrap things up tonight, I think that with the majority of people that watch me are altcoin investors. That's just the average retail investor in general around the cryptocurrency space. Everybody's so obsessed with altcoins. And while I love altcoins myself, I'm heavily invested in altcoins. I think it's very, very, very important that everybody keeps majority of their portfolio, at least 50% inside of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is still the driver of value in the market. Now, one thing that keeps popping up as I get on Twitter and as my Twitter starts to actually grow and I get more interactions from my subscribers and people that follow me is the fact that everybody's kind of has this idea that, oh, I'm going all in on XRP or I'm going all in on Ethereum because it's going to be better than Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's not only going to be the driver of value. And it's like, well, all of that can be true, yes, but at the end of the day, why would you fight the trend which has yet to actually perform in which you're kind of talking about? Because that's up to this point, Bitcoin has been the driver of value inside the market. It has never been another way. And to see kind of altcoins do go on these rallies, but at the end of the day, if you look at maybe Dogecoin on Bitcoin, if you take a look at any of the original altcoins from way back in the early days that have actually been around since 2013, like Dallin said, they are in long-term downtrends against the Bitcoin pair. And so what that tells me is that Bitcoin's continuing up in its uptrend. And while altcoins will still make rallies during the Bitcoin cycles, they're never outperforming Bitcoin to the extent in which they maybe originally did. They're still in long-term downtrends, and they have yet to break their all-time high BTC value. And so for me, it's a no-brainer, and it's the smartest investment for yourself to ride the long-term trend of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's more stable than these altcoins. Bitcoin might drop 50%, and your altcoins might drop 50% 3 different times. So that really is a big thing that a lot of people getting into the market now, a lot of you guys that follow me actually got into the market around 2017, some of you a little bit earlier, but I would say the majority of people that watch me got in towards the end of 2017. And so a lot of people were really riding that altcoin hype. Maybe some of you guys made some money off of them. But one thing I can say from my own experience and a lot of mistakes that I personally made in the last bull run was not holding more Bitcoin and not holding enough Bitcoin, because I got so married to the idea of these altcoins going up. And while they did go up and I did make a lot of money, I would have made more consistent money and I would have had more consistent gains had I just held Bitcoin for the long term. And so that's something that I kind of want all of my subscribers to know. At the end of the day, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I do promote a lot of other altcoins, but at the end of the day, I trust Bitcoin first and foremost because it is the driver of value in the market. Even if it's got these fundamental flaws that people don't agree with, it's not as fast as XRP. Theoretically, you could get a big enough mining pool together and you could start reversing transactions. Until that actually takes place, I'm not personally going to be buying into that fear. I'm personally going to continue to add to my Bitcoin stack because at the end of the day, and really the goal of my channel and the goal for all of my clients that I help manage money with has always been always trade altcoins to accumulate more Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the one that I can count on for the future. And Bitcoin is the one that everybody's adopting. It's got the most fun. It's got the most institutional development over any other cryptocurrency up to this point. Sure, you have XRP and like Ethereum that have partnerships, but at the end of the day, Bitcoin is the one that is actually getting the institutional involvement. We have Backed, we have the CME, we have all of these things that are starting to get implemented. I mean, even at the bottom when Bitcoin was at $3,200 in December, you had the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, coming out and openly admitting that he's buying Bitcoin per week, $10,000. You had different people like Elon Musk tweeting about cryptocurrency, and who knows if he was actually buying it. But the fact that these guys knew that it was a good time to be buying, and that's why they were talking about it, leads me to believe that they're accumulating the biggest cryptocurrency. It's going to be the first one to really experience that institutional adoption in this next cycle. And that's why it's very important that you guys hold predominantly Bitcoin, because before I wrap this up, I remember altcoins really didn't even make a very big impulse until Bitcoin had already hit the all-time high mark and started breaking out of the all-time high of about $1,150 in the last cycle. And I expect this cycle to perform very similarly to the last one. I think that Bitcoin's most likely going to front run the next rally. It's going to kind of hold and suppress altcoins, and they might still rally with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's going to lead that pack, and it's going to be that big driver of value. And we won't see all of that retail FOMO driving the altcoins until after we hit that all-time high and break out of that. And so that's kind of my thoughts regarding what I see with Bitcoin, why you should hold more Bitcoin, and why I personally am less invested into altcoins.
Same. And it just goes to show XRP, those coins will pop off most likely, but it's not every single altcoin that pops off, whereas Bitcoin pops off every single time. So there's that risk of picking the right altcoin. And then aside from that, altcoins, they perform better than Bitcoin through periods of time, but it's always a cycle where they pop very quickly and then Bitcoin takes back over. And so that pop, yes, you can make a lot of money off that pop, but remember that that's a little bit more high risk than if you're making something money off Bitcoin, which more steadily grows. And you can see that if you go look at EMC squared or XRP, and then you go look at the Bitcoin chart, you'll see just this huge spike one day in XRP, just went straight up. And then you'll see in Bitcoin where it rounded up and ramped up into this big cycle before it actually went into a downtrend. So there's that difference in popping, real quick pop in the altcoins, and that steady growth that Bitcoin has. So it's kind of like when you invest in the stock market, you put the majority in the S&P 500, and then you trade the other smaller stocks on top of that because they're higher risk, but the S&P has the most steady long-term growth curve. So that's how I see Bitcoin in correlation to the cryptocurrency markets. But yeah, that's basically everything I wanted to run over today. I think we did a really good job explaining everything. Again, you guys, if you've been getting value, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button with the notification bell, and comment down below. And I'll let you go ahead and take this and take it from here and end us out.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. Anybody that's watching, if you found this helpful or you want to see more podcast-like settings, make sure you guys leave a comment. You can message me on Discord. You can also contact Dallin through all of the same social media handles. I'll link his channel in the description of this video so that you guys can find him. Make sure you go subscribe to his channel. He's got a ton of really good analysis and thought perspective regarding cryptocurrency. Really, guys, we wanted to make this podcast to just keep you guys informed, because at the end of the day, when I just do my technical analysis, we're only looking at things from mainly just a price perspective. We don't get to talk about our overall thoughts and perspective with what's going on. I've thought about vlogging, but I think that this makes a little bit more sense because me and Dallin can kind of get on, share with you guys our thoughts and analysis, and then we can also nitpick each other and things that we might say. So that's really why we wanted to make this. We thought that this was a really good idea to keep all of you guys informed with kind of what we think about the cryptocurrency markets and stray a little bit less close to the overall just technical analysis perspective. We'll still do some TA, but overall we want to be able to talk about other things that don't normally get mentioned inside of our videos. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure hosting the episode number 1 of the Moon Boy podcast. So thank you guys all for tuning in today. We will catch you in the next video. As always, peace out.
Stay profitable out there, boys. Moon boys.
Moon boys.